Good morning, my friends. This is Deepak, continuing in our series on everyday immortality. And I'm hoping that you will go back to the earlier series on spiritual solutions, existential anxiety, how to go beyond the fear of death, and many other videos that I've done in both the previous series and the current series is an extension of that. So before this, we also spoke about the mystery of death, which is tied and entangled to the mystery of birth and the mystery of existence. So I do encourage you to go back and see the sequential unfoldment of these ideas, although every time I speak to you, I say some things that I've said before and then try and go a little further in our understanding. So today's topic is that the conquest of death is the dismantling of illusions. Once again, the conquest of death is the dismantling of illusions. So let me begin by addressing this from two perspectives. The perspective of modern science, but then also the perspective of consciousness-only monism. So once again, let me address this from two perspectives. Number one, the perspective of current science, and the perspective that comes from the experiential knowledge and understanding of consciousness-only monism. Let's go ahead. Okay. The reason people are afraid of death is either consciously or subconsciously. They identify themselves with their physical body and their mind. And if we want to be ruthlessly honest about this, then we should look at these two entities, physical body and mind, from every angle, ruthlessly, to see if in fact there is such a thing as a physical body and a mind. Because if both the physical body and the mind are basically useful illusions, I'm calling them useful fictions, then all our anxiety about death is about a useful fiction. All our anxiety about death is about useful fictions, both the fiction of the mind and both also the fiction of the body. So let's examine these two fictions from the perspective of both modern science and also the non-dual consciousness-only monism. I just put my book Metahuman in the background because that's what Metahuman does. But I'm now exploring it with you as well. How does science look at the physical body? So how does science look at the physical body right now? Let's start with very basic things. Your body is made up of atoms and molecules. Okay, and it is this understanding that atoms and molecules make up the physical material body that we use today in all our scientific understanding of the body. So where do these atoms come from? Where does the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen that structures your DNA, which is the alphabet of life, which makes the genes the words of existence, which ultimately organizes the activity that you call the body? Where do the atoms and molecules of the DNA basis ultimately come from? These atoms, mostly carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and then the other elements of the periodic table, they were originally made in the crucible of burning stars. In fact, it's estimated that there might be 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, uncountable trillions of planets, and only 50% of the atoms in your body come from the Milky Way galaxy. The others may come from other galaxies. And those atoms got sucked into our galaxy through a mechanism called galactic wind. Gravitational forces that sucked atoms from other galaxies into our galaxy. And these atoms are now recycling as your physical body. So the atoms in your body were created in the crucible of burning stars, not only in our galaxy, but other galaxies. And they recycle through the ecosystem on planet Earth. 98% of the atoms in your body were not there 1 year ago. The atoms that make up your stomach cells recycle every 5 days, your skeleton every 3 months, your DNA every 3 months or so. Even the carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen, the nitrogen that comes and goes in your DNA is a moving recycling process. Your DNA holds memories of millions of years, but the actual raw material of the DNA comes and goes every 6 weeks. So, do the atoms in your body belong to you, or do they come from the universe? Do the atoms in your physical body also not belong to others through which they have recycled? The atoms in your body have recycled through the body of Jesus Christ, or Buddha, or Genghis Khan, or Hitler, or Stalin, or Donald Trump, or anyone else you want to think about, the Pope. So obviously, the atoms that make up your body don't belong to you. Your body is the recirculation of atoms that recycle through the ecosystem, through plants, through bacteria, through every sentient being, and they, at the moment, happen to be recycling through you. Your body does not belong to you. Physical body does not belong to you. It's just the universe recycling through you, number one. Number two, even though these atoms belong at the moment to what you call your body, in reality, they are just the place your memories call home for the time being. Your body is actually a formless consciousness field that is recycling memories, and we happen to call these memories atoms and molecules, because atoms and molecules are names we give to modes of knowing and experience from the past. And so actually your body is, as I've said before, the place your memories call home for the time being. I'm looking at some of my notes to see some of the things that I've been scribbling down about this as I'm writing even my next book. And what I said is, other than the fact that your body is just the place your memories call home for the time being, you can think of your body, in fact, as a river of memory that is recycling and also evolving into higher levels of abstraction, creativity, vision, and deeper understanding of reality. And as we move into that direction, it becomes very, very obvious that everything that we call the brain, the body, is actually a symbolic representation of an experience you're having right now, timelessly and now, eternally and now. Your body is just recycling of memories, imagination, and constructs. It appears physical, but it's a flowing river of energy information, which themselves are symbolic representations of consciousness. So your body is not a physical structure, nor is it a noun. It's a verb, but even as a verb, it's something so abstract and so formless that it's a miracle that it appears as a changing form and a changing phenomena. So every form is changing. And every form is a phenomenon. And every phenomenon is actually the entanglement of memory, imagination, desire, longing, and deeper understanding of what the heck is going on. So we can look at the body as a totally abstract, formless field appearing as form and phenomena, or we can reify that understanding as an object out there. Then we can scientifically study it and say it's made of atoms, molecules, force fields, recognizing that even atoms, molecules, force fields are symbolic representations of modes of knowing and experience. Before you can say, what is the nature of the universe? There has to be somebody to ask the question. Before you can say, what is the nature of the physical body? There has to be something or some entity to ask the question. What is that entity? And what is that entity constructing as a physical reality out of something that is totally formless? If you understand that, then you'll realize that I am a body is a misperception. It's an illusion. And so I am a body is the first illusion. The second illusion is I'm a mind. Because if you really look at the mind, and we say, where is the mind? Just like where is the body? Body has no location in space-time. Even though as a perceptual object, it appears in space-time, the qualities of that experience that we call perception are not in space-time. Where does the color red exist? Is my color red the same as your color red? Is my color red the same as what a bat would experience when it looked at this shirt through the echo of ultrasound? Doesn't make any sense. The qualities of experience, like colors, shapes, sounds, textures, fragrances, smells, tastes, sensations, images in consciousness, ideas, none of these have a physical location in the world. But when we reify these experiences, objectify them, then we come up with the construct of a physical body in a physical location. Totally abstract, actually. It's an idea, nothing more than that. And so the fear of death of the body is also an idea based on the idea that you are a body. Same thing with the mind. All definitions of the mind are actually pointing to a direction where it's very clear that you don't have a mind. It's very clear that what we call the mind is an embodied and relational process. And this is one of the definitions from my friend Dan Siegel, who defines the mind as an embodied and relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information in the ecosystem of existence. So even the mind doesn't belong to you, and all your thoughts are being recycled from the collective mind. The collective mind and the individual mind are entangled and complementary to each other. There's no individual mind in the absence of a collective mind, and there's no collective mind in the absence of an individual mind contributing to it. So collective mind and personal mind are not only entangled, they're complementarities over something even deeper, which is the universal mind, which is pure consciousness, which is experiencing itself as the collective mind, as the individual mind, and the perceptual activity of all these individual minds, collective minds, which are not only culture specific, but species specific. Where is the mind? It has no location. Where is the body? It has no location. So what are we afraid of when we fear death? We are afraid that the mind and the body will lose their present location, when in fact there was no location to begin with. We are non-local beings having a local experience, and it's a total perceptual anomaly. It's a trick. Just like it's a trick that the world is solid. It's a trick that the earth is flat. It's a trick that the ground is stationary. It's a trick that there are stars and moon and sun and sky, when in fact all you experience is sensations. what you call the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the Milky Way galaxy, physical bodies, paintings, microphones, rainbows, books, everything that you can have a word for, anything that you have a word for is an experience. And every experience is entangled as sensations, which include sense perceptions, images, feelings, thoughts. You do not see the Milky Way galaxy. You have access only to your perceptions. And that, as I've said, is a very narrow bandwidth of perceptual activity, human perceptual activity, given a construct, universe, mind, body. In fact, consciousness is fluctuating ceaselessly and eternally with changes of state. Every time you have a different thought, everything changes. Why? Because thoughts are entangled with perceptions, sensations, images, feelings, and everything that we have a word for. So you change a thought, the entire space-time geometry of the universe changes. You change a perception, same thing happens. You change a feeling, same thing happens. You change an interpretation, same thing happens. Because you have access only to that, not to the universe. In fact, the universe is a mental construct based on an interpretation of perceptual activity. Furthermore, just a human perceptual activity in the human mind, which has been conditioned into constructs ever since we created language. So language began when we started to learn A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then with that we constructed words, and from words we constructed paragraphs and narratives, and then ever since humans have been thinking, they've created narratives, and then they think that the narratives are actually the reality. So we created mythical narrative for creation. Then we created philosophical narrative, theological narrative. We have narratives for everything, for money, for Wall Street, for latitude, for longitude, for Greenwich Mean Time. But we don't realize that the body and the mind and the universe are also narratives. And the latest narrative is the scientific narrative. And it's a good narrative because it helps us deal with technology. But we have always said that while the scientific narrative is very useful for communicating, creating technology, if you want to know ruthlessly what is truth, then you have to realize that the narrative is useful for what it explains and useless if you want to know the meaning of existence. So, in order to conquer death, we have to conquer our illusions, our narratives. The first illusion is I'm a person. I am not a person. I am the awareness in which the person is a process, a constantly, ceaselessly changing state of being that is ceaselessly changing its state through the birth and death of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, perceptions, and interpretations. Constantly changing. Okay. Consciousness vibrates. And the vibration is just that. Sensations, perceptions, images, feelings, thoughts. On top of that, there are models we create. Theological models, religious models, philosophical models, scientific models. Then we mistake the model for the reality, the map for the territory. So that is our problem right now. We have to actually recognize that the model of reality is not reality. The menu is not the meal. The map is not the territory. And once we recognize that, then we recognize the following illusions. I am a person is an illusion. I am my thoughts is an illusion. I am my sensations is an illusion. I am my perceptions is an illusion. I am my theories is an illusion. I am followed by any word in any language is an illusion. Till you know the source of Language. What is the source of language? What is the source of thought? Is the source of thought entangled with the source of perception? Is the source of perception entangled with the source of meaning? Is the source of meaning entangled with the source of feeling? Is the source of feeling entangled with the source of imagination? Is the source of imagination entangled with the source of memory? And when you realize that all these entanglements are just consciousness modifying itself into symbolic expressions, and what you're afraid of is the death of the symbol, mistaking the symbol for the reality. Mistaking the symbol for the reality. So as long as you have a word, as long as you can describe it, as long as you can define it, as long as you can imagine it, as long as you can conceptualize it, as long as you can perceive it, it's not real. It's constantly the activity of something that is totally unreal, seemingly, but totally real, because without it, there would be no illusions. An illusion is a very interesting thing. It feels real. So the body feels real. The earth as being stationary feels real. The sun and the moon and the stars feel real, even though they are perceptual activities in our own consciousness. They feel real. So they feel real, and yet they are not real. That's the best illusion you can have. When a magician pulls out a rabbit from a hat, you're amazed till you find out how he does it or she does it. And then you say, oh, this is the trick. So now you know the trick, how we create the physical universe, or the idea of a physical universe, how we create the trick of an idea of a physical body, how we create a trick of my mind, my body, my car, my mortgage, my house. Actually, nothing belongs to you, unless everything belongs to you. Take your pick. Either nothing belongs to you, or everything belongs to you. And once you ground yourself in that being, yogastha kuru karmani, then actually you can see that the entanglement is so fine-tuned that by shifting one little piece of it, you shift the whole thing. And that's the basis of infinite universes that come and go in the vast expanse of consciousness, like motes of dust dancing in a beam of light. Because these lokas, these universes, are not locations in space-time, but are imagined into existence in different frequency states of being. And those states of being are automatically shifting and evolving right now as we speak, without any interference. Without any interference. In being is the whole universe recycling, your body recycling, what you call your mind recycling, what you call your personality recycling. But even as it's recycling, it's evolving to new identities. And all identities are provisional. And the fear of death, the conquest of death, is to actually understand that all that is dying is a provisional identity. And it has been doing that ever since you were a fertilized egg, or an embryo, or a zygote, or a baby, or a child, or a teenager, or whatever you're seeing as yourself right now in the mirror. So, dismantling illusions. I'm a body is an illusion. I'm a mind is an illusion. I'm a thought is an illusion. I'm a perception is an illusion. Anything I can name is an illusion. I am nameless, formless, timeless, ungraspable, unimaginable, non-conceptualizable, irreducible, fundamental, without cause, and invisible. Only the invisible is real. Anything that's visible is a symbolic manifestation, temporary, impermanent, of the invisible. The conquest of death is the conquest of illusions. We can explore this because once we know that we are the creator of the illusion, the producer of the illusion, all the characters in the illusion, all the seers, all the sceneries, then this is a fun game because ultimately we can manufacture the universe that we want to inhabit. Now, there were a couple of phrases that I had written down that I'm trying to find because they were precious. And so, yeah, these make it practical. Here are one phrase: be alert to those moments when you experience your fundamental self behind a breath, a feeling, or a sensation. So once again, be alert not to the scenery, but to the seer. That's one suggestion. Another suggestion: think of yourself as a speck of consciousness, alert, awake, uninvolved, silent, and yet intensely alive. Intensely alive. Only the invisible is free of its manifestations. Awareness is intrinsically free of its constructions. Allow knowledge and vision of the future to influence your present. And the best vision of the future is, I want to be ruthlessly honest in discovering who I am, even though I have to forsake my name and my identity as a body, as a mind. I'm not a citizen of America or any other country, but a citizen of the cosmos. Remind yourself of that every day. So if you remind yourself of all these things, then you will get to the most important conclusions of today's exercise, today's lesson, and I'm going to read them out to you, the most important conclusions as today's lesson. Seers, sages, don't believe in death. In the light of awareness, everything is alive. There are no beginnings or endings. Beginnings and endings are mental constructs. When you look at a little piece of the picture, look at a big circle and then look at a little fragment of that circle, it almost seems a straight line, and then you construct the idea of beginning and ending. The Vedanta says the experience of space begins when we identify with the body. The experience of time begins when we identify with the mind. The experience of cause, effect, karma, all this begins when we impose limitations on our infinite self. So don't believe in death. In the light of awareness, everything is alive. There are no beginnings or endings. To the seer, to the sage, these are only mental constructs. To be most alive, you have to be dead to the past, relinquish the past. It doesn't exist anymore. As Krishnamurti said, don't be a prisoner of the known. Step into the unknown in every moment of existence. And finally, realize that molecules dissolve and pass away, but consciousness survives the death of the matter on which it rides. So as consciousness, you know how to digest food, and the molecules that we call enzymes and pepsin and hydrochloric acid, they come and go. But the know-how of digesting food survives. The memory to digest food survives the death of pepsin and hydrochloric acid. Your emotions symbolically are represented by oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, opiates. But these opiates come and go in the twinkling of an eye. All these molecules, they recycle, they are born, they die. But you, as the creator of emotions, survives the molecules through which these emotions are expressed. Your immune cells die every 120 days. But if you're exposed to pneumococcus, even though you've never met a pneumococcus bacterium before, you know how to make the antibody because an ancestor made it once upon a time, and that memory is right there in you, right now in your consciousness. And it knows immediately how to make the right antibody, even though you have never been exposed to it. So what are you doing? How do you make that antibody? Because you have access to the knowledge in consciousness of how to make the antibody. So everything in your body is dying and being born. Skin cells die and are born once a month. But they remember the experience of hot and cold, of pleasure and pain, because that's a quality of awareness that is recycling as the cells of the skin. In fact, 98% of all the atoms in your body are new. The brain that learned how to speak the English language is not the brain that is speaking the English language right now. The brain that learned how to walk is not the brain that is being used for me to walk right now. In fact, everything I do is a learned phenomenon, and even my brain, my body, my mind, my perceptual activities are learned constructs that recycle and evolve to higher levels of creativity on an endless journey in cosmic time. This is what the spiritual traditions mean when they say, what good does it do for a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul? That's what we're doing. And the pandemic COVID virus is reminding us, don't lose your soul. Okay? Epidemics will come and go, bodies will come and go, minds will come and go, experiences will come and go, but the creator, the consciousness that symbolically represents itself as mind, body, and the world, is eternal and now. And even though we say the soul's journey through cosmic time, there is no journey. There's only a constantly shifting phenomenon of states of being. States of being shift constantly, eternally. And with every shift, there is birth and death. But that which is shifting is timeless and now. So, yeah, this is the matrix, Metta matrix beyond. You're right. I think you're all relating to this. We shall continue this conversation. And I thank you for joining me. Until tomorrow, be well, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and God bless. Remembering that God is not a deity out there, but the divine in you. Actually, the divine is not you in you. You are in the divine. The body is in that. The mind is in that. Everything that you have a word for is in that. And as we go further in our journey, with new modes of knowing and experiences, we'll come up with new words. We'll come up with new language, because without a word, there is no experience. The word is the flesh. If you don't have a word for it, it's not yet in your mode of knowing and experience. Katie says, you eat the banana dies, but it is resurrected as you, within you. Correct. Every time you eat a banana, you convert it into a human being. That's instant evolution, from banana to human being. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.